this session? Thank you. As you know, we had the 2 talk shows last week, so we thought today we try to address some of your feedback, and we try to offer you something a bit different compared to what we did the previous years. So we had 3 of your TAs who very generously offered to present their interpretation of the cases that you have been working on the last 3 weeks. So they will go on in a minute. Just to give you a brief introduction of what we're going to do today. You've seen this picture before now, so you know that TEMO is about the why, the what, and the how of managing organizations behind technology. And you know by now that we do this using blended learning. So one of the things that was important for today was reading the case analysis text, which I guess you already did anyway, because it was to prepare for the cases at the beginning. So that was the reading for today. And then what we thought we would do today is also do a wrap-up and try to connect the different talk shows with the material for the course. So if you had the chance to go back to your notes, that was really good, because we're going to talk about it after the TAs present. So the main part of this morning is going to be a case analysis, and we have the 3 cases in a moment. And after that, we will move on to the wrap-up. The way we will do this is that each TA will present for about 10 minutes, and then you will have 5 minutes to ask them questions about the case and about the way they interpreted it. And as they also asked us to say, remember that this is not the one solution to the case, but it's just the way they decided to approach it. So also when you address the case this afternoon and then in the exam, remember there are a wide range of solutions, and you just need to pick the one that you think works best for the case that you're working with. So without taking any more time away from your case analysis session, I welcome the first TA for today. Do you have the mic?
I should just talk into this, right?
Yeah. Okay. And they are going to turn it on. Okay.
Okay, hello. I am going to present the first case, the taste of wine. I had this case 1 year ago for my examination. So the first thing I started out by doing was to identify the key problem and the key problem owner. My key problem was that Milk4 strategy only focused on the Danish dairy industry, and the key problem owner was the CEO and top management team and their position at the strategic level. Before diving into analysis, I made some assumptions. My first one was that Milk4 is economically capable of producing broad-range sensors. The market will change, and we will eventually lose our competitive advantage. Yeah. Like this? Okay. And the last one is that broad-range sensors can be used in other industries' markets than just the dairy and wine industry. Then I moved on to have some causal explanation to actually explain why the key problem was happened. I started out by making a SWOT analysis. I'm not going to go through all the points, but basically I just identified the strengths, the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of Milk4 as it is right now. Then I looked into the effectiveness and efficiency of Milk4. And I identified that they have, right now, they're doing pretty good. They have high effectiveness and high efficiency. However, they're at risk at falling down to having low effectiveness. Then I also looked into some positioning strategies, and I identified that right now they are having high differentiation and high cost. However, they are at risk at falling down to having low differentiation, and this is due to competition that is increasing on the market. And then I just filled out the business model canvas. Yeah, I'm not going to go through all the points, but basically, yeah, I just filled out the blocks. The same I did with the STAR model. I identified there was a misalignment between people's practice, strategy, and processes. So these were the ones that I wanted to focus on in my solution part. However, as you will see my solutions, when I'm changing one of the aspects, some of the aspects will also change, so it will be aligned. And then I just quickly went through competitive advantages. I identified that they have high efficiency, high quality, and high responsiveness to customers. However, they are lacking in speed, flexibility, innovation. To summarize my identified causes, internally there's a misalignment of structure, processes, and people's practice, which leads to a culture that does not promote innovation and entrepreneurship. There's also a lack of vertical flow of information. Milkforce risk losing market share and their competitive advantage due to lack of innovation in a global aspect. Milkforce does not want to expand globally because it's an uncertain market. They'd rather stay in Denmark because it's certain. The development manager says no, this could be due to that he's just following the company strategy, or that it could also be due to that he feels power loss. And then Milkforce risk losing customers due to better technology development and innovation from competitors. Everyone can offer the same better product, and there's a reduction in Milkforce differentiation, as I also said earlier. Then my proposed solutions to overcome these problems. I started out by making a problem tree in which I had 3 possible markets that Milkforce could enter to. I could go with. The first one was the wine market, in which they could collaborate with the French wine manufacturer, which they met at the fair. And then they could also invest themselves. Then in the breweries, they could go global or they could go domestic, or they could stay in the dairy industry and expand globally. And I chose that they should stay in the dairy industry and expand globally, and it was mostly because I wanted them to stay in the field that they are most secure in and they have the core competence in. Another thing why I want to expand globally is because they have already experienced success in Denmark, and when they have already experienced success, they might as well try to expand and see if they will have success in other countries as well. I also wanted them to continuously focus on improving their technology. So, because the competitors are strong in the broad range sensors and they are strong in precision, then they could continue improving the technology. So they would be strong in the broad range sensors. So they have 2 factors against 1 factor, and they would increase their competitive advantage. And then I filled out the new business model canvas with my implementations. So yeah, in developer position now they have high precision and broad range measurement technology, and they have some customer segments, they have global market, and they have key partners and so forth. And I did the same with my new STAR model. As you can see now, the STAR model is aligned, and my strategy is now that they will develop capable and sophisticated technology for the global dairy industry. And because we are going global, I also went in and changed the structure, even though it wasn't a misalignment before. So now they will have a global geographical structure. And then I did some changes in the other parts as well for it to be aligned. Yeah, and then I created a structure to Milkforce, global geographical structure. And I wanted them to focus on the European region to start out with, because they are already in Denmark, and I didn't want them, and then when they have seen success in other countries in Europe, I wanted to expand overseas. And then because we are going through a change in the organization, and the resistance to change is sometimes inevitable, then I went through these steps to make sure that the change process will be smoothened out. And then summing up my solutions, Milkforce should not enter the wine market, but instead remain in the dairy industry and expand globally to keep their competitive advantages and high differentiation. They should establish a global geographical structure, produce in-house and sell in different regions. It could also be possible to outsource some of the production or license the production. There should be vertical flow of information in which the company's strategy is clearly communicated throughout the entire company. They should encourage a global mindset, take use of Hofstede's model of national culture. They should establish innovation camps where engineers could present their ideas directly to the executive level, and this was because I saw that the two engineers, they were eager to get out their idea. So instead of bypassing the management, they might as well just get out their ideas in these innovation camps. And then lastly, brewery market is also a possibility in the long run because the brewery industry's level of technology is high, and thus there is a wide opportunity for milk fuzz to gain customers. And then I just went back to my assumptions. I made some robustness checks. Yeah. And then I just had some research about top global dairy companies because that would probably be some of our customers. And that was basically it. I just had Hofstede's model, national culture. And that was it for my presentation. Yeah.
What is the reason for the geographical structure?
I chose that because I want them to go global and I want to focus on different regions. And I want them to stay in a divisional structure, and geographical structure is within a divisional structure.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay, good. Thank you.
Hello, do you hear me? Yeah? Thank you. Hello. So I'm going to talk to you about the second case, which is soft performance. I also had this case last year, so it is, for me at least, one of the four, probably the most interesting because you have a lot of different aspects to consider in this one. But I'm going to start by reviewing just a brief agenda for this. So, you know, the usual way to approach to this kind of solutions. And first of all, you by now probably have read the case, if not, try to read it. And now, for the problem, what I identify as it was the failing revenue. No revenue stream. And the reason for doing that, because you can also argue for others, is that I think that this reflects the long run of the company, in the long run problem of the company. Because the other may have problems in the structure, we will also focus on that. But in the long term, if you want to continue with this company, at least as it is, you have to get money, and get money soon, as soon as you can. So, who are the problem owner? In this case, are Casper and Luke. And these guys are probably the most important, and the reason and the solution as well are in those hands as well. The assumptions, we are going to have only two. You can also have a lot other, but I think these two as the simple as you can have it. And first of all, you have a technical feasible to have a standard IT system, because we will go through that. Right now, there are very complicated and customized systems that are around there. So why not to have just one plain simple option so you can sell it and marketing better? That's pretty much what the rest of the software companies do. They have a standardized a solution for all to buy, and then maybe you can sell additional consulting options for that. So the other is that the licensing is legally possible. And why is that? Because you have an intellectual property, and in that sense you can argue that you can have additional revenue for the selling of this proposal. So Why they have this problem right now? And we have to consider that right now they have a low efficiency, low effectiveness. You can argue also why, but probably is because they don't have a poor, a good management. They have probably no management at all. They don't have like the knowledge about how to conduct a business. And well, they have a high cost per project. They include all their resources in that. And that leads to another 2 points, that they have a low value creation for the customers because they offer a lot of things that probably they don't use. So you have to consider this into your assumptions as well. The projects are never fully delivered, and they continue to improve, and they continue to offer things that maybe the customers appreciate because they like to be attended, but they don't use. So there's no money in that. And that creates, the consequence of that is that the value proposition is misaligned. And why is that? You have no gain for the company because they buy the product, but they don't use it. So they spend money that probably is not the best way to obtain what they want. And from the other point, you have a lot of implementation of improvements based on the reports that they have, but they don't use it. So it's a no-win solution in that, and you have to correct this situation as first of all, so you can move along with the rest of that. If you map this into the business canvas model, you will have, of course, to identify the stream of the revenue in this case. And you see that is not well assured. For example, you have a development customization of these KPI management system, and it's not well aligned for the post-implementation technical support. You have this proposal, but they don't really are paying for that, and you are giving that work for free, basically. So you end up having a lot of work that is not charged, and your asset sale is just one-time payment. So that's probably the first thing that you can attack. So, of course, you have organizational issues. This problem of constant reworking and additional work that you have to do for your customers. Take the responsibility out of Casper and Luke to manage actually the company, and they still are working as part of this development team. So what they have to do at this moment is, of course, identify that they have to work as CEOs or at least managers, and that they also have to identify that they don't have project managers right now. So that's a major thing. And if you see the activities of a manager in this case are not well developed, there are lack of these activities, responsibilities in here. So you also have to check what of these activities are not being carried out by these guys. So the proposed solution. First of all, you don't have money, so you have to stop and realize that you are not able to conduct the activities that are not giving you profit. So you have to check if renegotiate with your clients, if possible, for additional works that you can develop for them. You have to negotiate probably extensive contracts, so the technical support is included. Fees maybe to be charged for that as well. And of course, you also have to move for the organizational solution. Luke and Casper should decide one big thing, that is if they have to take the sabbatical years that they proposed. I think that's a good option for them. They have to rethink if they want to continue with the business. But they also have to delegate, and they have to hire a real manager that can be in the administrative part of the company, that can be in charge not only of the accountability, which is probably well done, but it's not the managerial thing that you need. It's not only to make the numbers, you also have to have a strategy for that. So they have to hire a full responsibility person that have that vision for carry out these organizational changes. And probably that will need to offer them like a part of the company. So you have to consider that you probably, that's something that you will have to give away. You have to also hire or at least point out project managers in charge of each one of these clients that you have. Maybe a product manager that overview the kind of product that you want to offer in that sense. You have to align your value propositions because right now they are not. So what you have to do in my solution is to have a standardized IT system that can be easily marketed, that is like the most basic solution for the companies. And from then on, you can probably create a more customized version of those for the clients that really want to. And least but not the less important is the consultancy. Right now, your customers buy something that they don't need really. So what you should do is to check up with them what they really need, how they can use the KPIs that right now they are having in their reports, so they can communicate throughout the organization and make sure that the lower levels of management understand how these KPIs affect their work. Because that's something that has not been carried out properly, and many of the data that the reports show are lost in the way of these solutions. So part of that is create a better organization. Here I'm using the STAR model that you also know right now on how to build up these new characteristics for the organization. I'm not going through all of these because it's a lot, but you can identify clearly which parts of these can be redrawn in order to create a better organization. And of course, in the center of this is the strategy that you want to implement. From this on, you can see a better solution on the canvas. And of course, with inclusion of this organizational change, then you can know a better revenue stream that is enhanced for the consultancy, the customized products that are additional to the base product that you are offering. And from that, you can have a clear and improved revenue source, and therefore additional revenue sources in that sense. And in the robustness check that you also have to do, I put to test my two assumptions. So what if it's not technically feasible to have a standard IT system? That is actually true. Maybe some of these systems are very different from the KPIs that one company measure to another. So if that is the case, maybe you are not able to offer a single product in that way. Well, in that case, the consultancy probably is not going to be into like additional service, but it's going to be like your main service, and you have to focus on that. So that's a possibility as well. And the licensing is legally not possible. So what you should do that, then probably you have to, you will not have the fees for the licensing of this software, and still this product can be sold. But then you have the threat that someone else will have a solution, a similar solution, and you have to keep up with these type of things all the time. Usually this is not the case because in software you can probably get a good support for legally protection. So I don't think this is a very realistic option, but you also have to consider it. So that's pretty much for my section. Yep. If you have any questions or comments, thank you. Thank you.
Hello. Sorry. Hello.
In your star model slide,
Yep.
under people, you've written maintain balance between individualism and collectivism. I was just wondering, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I like that because in this kind of, actually that was something that I came up with talking with software persons that work daily on that way. And they said that these type of things usually are very collaborative. So in a way, you have the best way to solve these type of companies or to carry on with this type of companies is being open in a type of open company or open organization where everybody has the possibility to collaborate within the other teams. So that's what I call that way. It's not a rigid structure, so rigid that you cannot go and talk with some other groups and come up with new ideas. But definitely you have to have a sort of a structure in order to prioritize and come up with the solution at the end.
Thank you.
Yeah, most welcome. Any other question?
I have a comment to your presentation. Thank you. Because your presentation is, you can say, a classic way of solving the problem with soft performance. And quite frequently we see that students propose a management change, that you need to hire a new manager. And I think for you who's worked with the case and have chosen the same solution, it's important that you consider what would be the implementation of this, or what is the risk in doing this. And you have models for this in terms of power structures. So what will then happen? You put in with a position power, but basically you have Casper and Luke with other types of power. So what will then happen if you make that redesign in your structure? What would then happen in your processes, and how would people react in terms of what is rewarding, both to Casper and Luke, and how does it actually work with the acknowledgement, another type of reward system, you know, the intrinsic rewards with your employees. So I think, my proposal is that if you've done this type of solution, you have to consider the risk in doing this. What will happen to the work processes, and how would you make sure that the new manager actually has the power to enforce his management? So that's one thing to consider. So the risk in doing this, not that it's wrong, but what will then happen with your business? There's another consideration which goes regarding, this is a KPI company, that you could also find out. So how do you actually, you've put us of these two models here, the job characteristics model and the other motivation model, then how do you could you set up a good KPI, and then how do people respond to structures like this? You go from a very informal structure to a more formalized structure, then what will then happen with the motivation? So considering the risk in your proposal is important, and that's the implementation model, the change management model that you used in your first presentation from Milkfoss could be something to consider to follow up on this. So how do you assess the need, and what will then happen when you start implementing this? Because it's you make a severe change here, and the system will respond to that. So some considerations when you propose the solution. Yeah. You want to comment on it?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I have, I think, some additional slides, but it's not worth that. Your comment is totally true, and I think that in this case, at least, and in this case, this type of reward system that you mentioned, it is something that you have also to consider for the type of persons that you are hiring. You're hiring students as well. So most of them are not motivated by probably the money, the easy money at this point, or at least probably what they are wanting here is experience, getting experience and reachability for networking and later on in their life. So I think you also have to take that into consideration into the signing of the reward system.
So, when you look at these two cases, so you have a very old company with very formalized structures, and this is a startup. So just considering these are two very different types of companies. Yes? Okay. Thank you. And then we have the third case. That's you, Sean.
All right. I'm going to present you our case that we developed with our team last year, Dream TEMO. And it's very unpolished since when we do it, because I wanted you to present how a student saw it 1 year ago and not as a TA after 1 year of seeing cases. So before we start, I think this case is a bit different from the other, and you noticed this last week, because it's very hard to start and see, oh, this is the issue, because in the case, you're presented with different opinions, and you kind of have to choose which one is the correct one. So let's start with some assumption. For me, there were two main assumptions. That one, there is an unexplored high-end market that currently is not being served by the company of Mr. Balloon. And also, as the time goes by, this will become the dominant market. Then, to better understand the company, we did a business model canvas. As you see, our customer are the medium-low price supermarket. That could be kind of Native or Aldi. And to them, we're proposing kind of a ready-made Chinese food that is cheap and fits well with their value proposition as supermarket. We think also that it's not a very in-depth relationship. Both is kind of customer relationship. It's just a sales, so there is no development together or no kind of collaboration. And also the channels, it's just direct sales. So there is a sales force probably that sells to the supermarket directly. When we go in kind of the internal side of the company and what they do, it's a very production-based company. So it goes all around that. Most of the employees are workers, and the key resources is the employees' knowledge and the machineries that they do it. We think of key partners, mainly they will have some logistic to deliver their products to the VR supermarket. As revenue stream, they probably have a low margin for each product, but they sell in very high number. And as the cost, we said before, it's a production company, so that's the main cost and the HR. Then, let's go to the key problem. So, from our assumption, the key problem that comes out is that there is a long-term viability issue, because if they keep focusing on the low quality market and the higher quality market becomes the dominant one, it's going to be an issue. And also, we think that there is some possible entry in the market. But beside this major problem, we also saw in the text that there were some internal problems, and this in particular could be seen with the new engineers that don't know who to report to, so there is not a very clear innovation structure, and also there is some kind of different opinions internally in which the company should go. Overall, we can sum up that the key problem owner, of course, is Mr. Balloon, because it's a strategical problem, the viability of the company. And using the 3 levels of organization is in the strategic. Let's jump to the causes. So first of all, internal causes. So we cannot see that there was a lack of vision from Mr. Balloon and the company. And this can be seen by the just didn't analyze in the market and being not ready for the change. In fact, using the model of organizational control and change, we think that now they're very focused on improving the operation, but they don't focus enough to respond to new events of the market. And this is also can be seen why their engineers were hired. The engineers were hired just to improve kind of the production, but with no clear guidance, just to make it better. Going instead to the external forces that cause the problem, we can use the 4 external forces. That it's a very big model. Actually, it's kind of 4 models in one, and so I'm just going to give you some highlights. In terms of market, we see that there is this shift to high quality market, and this is the main entry from this model. Then going to the industry, and in particular the industry model is the Porter 5 forces. We can see that there is a better technology going in, and this is kind of Mr. Cheng's view on the market since that he saw. In terms of macroeconomical forces, it's important to consider that we're talking about Chinese food. So of course globalization is an issue that will come into play sooner or later with products also coming from China directly. We sum up these two causes into the efficiency and effectiveness model, and we think that it's kind of a medium situation, like they're not doing very bad now, but there is for sure room for improvement. So in our solution, we will focus on improving both the efficiency and effectiveness of the situation. Our solution, we came up with different possible solutions to tackle the problem, and we did a decision tree. So the first thing, of course, could be just maintain the status quo and kind of do things better and better, and hoping that nothing changed in the market. And this could be kind of the solution in which the IT system that the engineers are proposing could be developed. Then there is just, okay, let's change our market, let's go towards a more high quality one. And this is more the continuous walk solution that Mr. Cheng is proposing. But then we think that there is a third solution that is kind of differentiate our product internally. So at the same time, we will keep the low quality line that is still selling well, and there is no reason to change now. But we will start preparing for the future by introducing a new line. And this is the solution that we choose. So to see how the solution will be implemented, first of all, we created a new business model canvas that has two coexisting value propositions. You can see in the different color, kind of green is the common one that is valuable for both of the lines. Instead, there is blue that is more the premium, and yellow that is the low quality line that we had before. We can see from starting from the customer that we kind of have two different customers for the two different lines, so we avoid internal cannibalization. And then value proposition, of course, it's different from the supermarket. There are some nice changes as we see in the key activities and key resources. In fact, now this business is more a product innovation business, so it's very important to focus on research and development and also like new technologies. Instead, to see how the things are going to change internally, I'm going to present you a complete star model redefinition to see that there is the new star model is aligned with the new product line. So, first of all, we were talking about in the beginning that one of the main issue was the lack of long-term vision, and we're fixing this by preparing an alternative if the market change of the new product line. And now we can see that organizational and control and change are more balanced just by tackling the product. And we will improve the competitive advantage by doing so in the long term. Talking about structure, we want to fix those internal problems that we saw in the beginning. So the R&D department will have a much more structure power and at the same level with production, so there is no miscommunication on how do you have to communicate to. And also we want to establish some units based on the lines. Moreover, we said that it's a product innovation business now, so the best process to support this kind of business is a sequential performance. We also think that having two different lines can improve the morale inside the company because it gives an opportunity to the employees to be recognized and be moved to a maybe higher quality company. So it's going to improve. And talking about Marshall hierarchy of needs, for sure it can impact the esteem needs that were not satisfied before. And when we talk about people, in a product innovation company, we need to recognize that the employees are not lazy and the new structure will provide them more opportunities and also more freedom. But of course, this is just a solution made on our assumption. So what happens if our assumption were wrong? So first of all, if currently there is no high-end market, the new line probably will not be a great success. And so what we have to do is probably use the new technologies that we acquired to develop the efficiency in the older line. And instead, moreover, if the new market is not becoming the dominant one, but there is still, we believe that the low quality line will still be in place, but we still have kind of a differentiation between the two lines. Thank you for the attention.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
Can you go back 2 or 3 slides where you were talking about people exactly? You were speaking about people like employees are not lazy, but in the test is written that also the 2 managers thought that there are no needs of changing in the process, and also the CEO has some doubts about changing, so he's not totally sure about the improvement of implementing the new technologies or implementing the process.
Yeah.
So why you are saying that the employees are not lazy if they are thinking that there are no needs to change?
So first of all, this is kind of the second phase of it's not an analysis of the current situation. So this is the manager, I kind of have to recognize this is the solution. But I also don't really see the connection between the not seeing the need for change and the fact of considering the employees lazy or not. I don't know if you want to formulate more.
Yeah, because I was thinking that if a manager or intermediate manager, I don't remember exactly the name of the 2 ones in the text, they were just saying that they are aware that their technologies are not the best one, and in fact the low quality is the result of that. But they are thinking that there are no needs to change the process of creating the food. So that's probably, in my opinion, is a synonymous of lazy people, because they are aware of their low quality product, but they are not doing anything to change them.
But I mean, you know, quality is always perceived by the customer. So in their opinion, probably the product is not low quality for the customer because it satisfies their needs. So I don't think it's a question of laziness that they don't want to change. It's a question of how they interpret the market in the future. And I think the question is not so much if they should have changed before. I mean, now it's totally fine that at the moment they have this product that is low quality, because for the customer, it's not perceived as low quality. What we're saying here is that in the future, customer will perceive it as low quality. Any more comments?
Thank you for your presentation. 2 things. Have you considered who is going to build the VOC? Because it's your presentation is something that we know and it's familiar, but there is a question about who's actually going to build the VOC. Do we have the capacity? Do we have the capabilities in-house? Or so is Mr. Cheng? Basically, is he the guy who's going to build it, or do we need somebody else? Have you considered that?
Yeah, we considered 2 scenarios. One is about making him develop, so he will develop the idea and the concept, and then we will kind of have to pay him some license to use the product. Or instead, the second solution is kind of develop in-house with this collaboration, and then we will own the patent. And then maybe also interesting if we have the availability of money, because this solution could also allow us to license the product and maybe create a new revenue stream for the company.
So I would like to challenge you a bit. So you want a phone manufacturer and combine him with a guy with a good idea, and then suddenly they're good at developing or setting up a new VOC. Yeah. I think this is a thing to consider when you want to implement or to develop a new technology. Do you actually have the competences if you take your STAR model? Do you actually have the people, the practice, the processes to do that? Or do you actually need a third party in this if you want to do that?
No, but indeed, in the new business model canvas, Cheng is one of the key partners, because currently internally there is not enough skills to develop this new product.
Yeah, and then the question is whether he can build or we need a third party to say, That was one comment, and the other one is that if you take the implementation, the change management model, you have a lot of people with a lot of opinions, and how do you actually consider that? So when you have a lot of statements about how people react to a situation, how do you want to interpret it? Are they lazy, or are they basically just loyal to the strategy? Then it's important also to consider, so what would be the risk, or what you need to deal with in the implementation? So not that it's what I'm saying, but the next step would be, how do you want to implement this in practice? Yes, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you to the 3 TAs for kindly volunteering to present today. What I'm doing right now is what we were thinking that you could benefit from is actually having an idea of typical fallbacks, typical drawbacks, typical errors that we have seen from giving this course for years and semesters and reading. I don't even know how many reports we've read in the meantime. Having seen so many case analyses and so forth, we thought it would be a good idea to give you some insights on the main mistakes that we see, marking these reports and reading your thought processes. So as you saw with all of the 3 presentations, your report and your case analysis so far will have had 3 main contents, or 3 main points. All 3 TAs used this structure to present their case analysis, and that's exactly why we also ask you to use it. It's first defining what the problem is, then analyzing what the cause or causes of that are, and then suggesting one or multiple solutions that you can do with it. And the main drawback that we see, or the main experience I have had when reading reports, is when there's no logical connection between there. So when the problem is caused by, or when the problem statement contains statement A, then some completely random causes are analyzed, and then a completely random solution is proposed that may or may not address the problem in the first place. For example, for case number 1, we have had a problem statement is that the strategy only focuses on the Danish milk industry. We've actually had some, I'm not picking you out, we actually had some pretty good presentations of case examples here. And she rightly used models to analyze the external environment of the company, to analyze the competitive advantage and so forth. What we have seen, if you have a problem statement like that, is to use models that look at the STAR model, for example, just to analyze the internal structure, which is something that doesn't actually give you any detail with regard to what causes the problem. When we mark your reports, we give you a lot of freedom with regard to how you define the problem. So that is completely up to you. And if you choose to use a relatively high-risk problem statement, considering the challenges that you are given, we tend to not mark you down based on that. So you have a lot of freedom on here. Use that freedom to define what problem you want to look for. One tip I can give you based on my experience is you make your own job much easier if you define that problem well. We had in the presentations a lot of relatively short problem statements, and I guess that is part of presenting it and so forth, that you don't want to have huge sentences in the presentation. The more or the better defined your problem statement is, the easier it will be for you to analyze the causes, and the easier it will be for you to analyze the solution. For example, for case 3, we had the problem statement, and I quote, "Long-term viability is at risk," which is true, and that is a problem to analyze, and that is a relevant problem for that case. How you could have formalized it, or what would be a good way to formulate it in a report, is that the long-term business of providing low-quality Chinese food may not deliver enough revenue stream for the business to be viable in the long-term future in this context. That gives you a good analysis in terms of, or a good basis in terms of analyzing the external causes and analyzing the internal availability there. Do you see the difference between my statement and what was presented? Good. So that was some comments on the problem analysis. You have a lot of freedom there. Use that freedom to try and make your own life easier in the report. You have the ability there to not only define a key problem, but to define sub-problems as well. So if you choose to say, this is my big key problem, and there are some external factors to it, and there may be some internal factors to it, feel free to do it, but do consider that you need to analyze them and need to describe all of them in as much detail, considering you have constraints in terms of the report length. Then the problem needs to be analyzed for relevant causes, or for causes that actually cause the problem, using relevant models. And what we often see here is that students think the more of the models of the TEMO toolbox I put in there, the better, and that is not the case. You can come up with one main cause, in an extreme case, using one specific model. That would be fine. If you are able to use the model correctly, if you're able to use it in enough depth to actually describe it, that would be fine. We would not be marking you down on that. Having said that, a lot of the models need subsequent models to actually feed in and actually provide the relevant depth. But generally, we will do not put more models is better, because you will not have enough space to describe the models, and most likely what we have seen is that a lot of the models are actually used wrongly. They're not used to analyze the right type of causes or present the right type of information regarding it. So what we have, I'm using again case 1, for example, because that was one of the very early ones, looking at a strategy or a misaligned strategy. And RTA rightly presented a model for the competitive analysis, where you can say this is what the company can do, and this is how it compares to its main competitors. She could have also looked at, for example, using the external forces, the 4 external forces, to describe, is there actually a need to globalize? Is the Danish dairy industry actually going to reduce enough so that the company needs to expand globally? Or could it also just go on as it does right now? So that would be a way of actually using relevant models in order to analyze your problem in more detail. What I liked about all of the presentations is that the courses were nicely summarized in a relatively short bullet-pointed list. These are the main courses we have. That is something that looks really good in a report and will definitely help you in bringing your argument across. And then this needs to be logically linked to the solution. So if your problem is actually that the strategy isn't well defined, and your causal analysis showed that, well, they have a lot of internal capabilities that they're not needing, but they're not aligned with external forces, then your solution should focus on the external forces, on what part of the external environment are they not targeting correctly. If your problem was that the strategy is not well defined and the problem lies internally, then your solution should also focus on internal solutions. Does that make sense? What we have read is that there is a problem, for example, the strategy, we have multiple causes for it, and now what we should do is hire some random manager who the company doesn't have money to hire, and they should be great at their job, and that's what we make sure, and then that solves our problem. There isn't really much alignment there, and this is where we have to mark you down. And again, your solution can be one solution, it can be multiple solutions, and as we've seen in some of the case analyses, it can even include that actually they should stay where they are right now, if that addresses your problem. So this is the main problem, is if there is no logical flow between them. The second main problem is if models that we give you are used incorrectly. If, for example, parts of the STAR model are used that you actually describe job characteristic or job design characteristic when it comes to processes, if you're and these sorts of things. If you're actually describing decision-making power in terms of where the rewards are in the STAR model and so forth. So a model that you use, we're not forcing you to use specific models. The models that you need to use for your analysis depends on your problem statement, and that is down to you. But the models that you do choose to use, you need to use correctly. If you use them incorrectly, we have to mark you down on that. And if all of the models you use are used incorrectly or very shallow, with very shallow description, we have to mark you down on that. Okay? And this whole fits into the assumptions and the robustness check problem. And there what we want to see is mainly, are you able to fit it into the wider context? That doesn't necessarily need to be connected to any models. That doesn't necessarily need to be connected to the specific problem statement. What we want to see there is, are you able to use your common sense to critically question what you have described in your own report? And it is fine to then say, if this assumption doesn't hold, our whole analysis will basically break down because we cannot deliver X, Y, and Z. That is fine. We will not mark you down on this, as long as you can describe where this comes from. Okay? So we do want to see some self-criticism, some ability to criticize your own use of models, you criticize your own assumptions there. But mainly and most importantly, we want you to use the models correctly and in a logical sense. Do we have questions for that? You're all looking a little bit shell-shocked here. Do we have comments from?
Yes, there's one comment. Thank you for your wrapping up or the presentation. One thing I think is important to say is that always remember to bring in not the whole curriculum, like in detail all models, but that this whole course has two focus points. One is the business model canvas and the environment that the business is in and the market and how it relates to the interior, how it relates to how we organize our work. So let's say you work with a case this afternoon, Humantech, and you only look at how come this team is not working as it was supposed to, and you only have like an interior or an internal focus, and you forget that it's related to the environment and the market that they're in. Then if that would have been the report, then you would have missed out half of the, you can say, curriculum. So always remember that every time we have a problem, try to relate it. How come we ended up in this situation, or how does it feed back to the situation that this company is in? So when you look at the courses, you know, that you have to work with, you can say, both parts of the curriculum like you did in your presentation, and not just jump into either only the business model canvas and then you forget the company or the workplace, or you only look at the workplace and you forget the market that they're in. I think that's the, yeah, but otherwise it was, yeah, very clear, I think, what Melanie said. Yeah.
If there's no specific questions, then we have a short break of 10 minutes, 15 minutes, so we meet back here at 15:15. If you happen to come up with questions afterwards,